Okay, so I'm gonna be honest, I have not really thought about the Caliber SRT-4 ever. But here I find myself in one. This is a car that could very easily slip under the radar. Luckily here today, we have a car that you cannot quickly forget. This is a big turbo Caliber SRT-4, putting down close to 500 wheel horsepower.
All right, so my name is Brandon. It's a 09 Caliber SRT-4. I've had the car since 2014, and my plan was just to daily it. And then I had a little bit of a mishap with the tuner, blew my engine, and then it just kind of went from there. Had a few mods on it already, pretty tastefully done. And I just kind of continued it on from there to what it is today. It's pretty rowdy.
So these engines, the 2.4s in these cars, kind of similar but very different from the Neon SRT-4 engines as far as I know. So this one's an aluminum block, so they are kind of similar to the Mazda Speed 3, which we'll talk about later, is prone in certain scenarios to cracking. The block is prone to cracking. So what do? Well, the owner of this car, Brandon, has solved that, or so it seems. So we'll talk to Brandon, we'll get his side of the story, what he's done to the car. Ooh, the clutch is really intense. God, I wasn't even trying to do anything. It's already trying to yank me off the road. It does have a 6-puck sprung clutch, so it's a little bit aggressive, but not actually to the point where it's so heavy that you couldn't daily it. Definitely not. It's got a nice shifter here. This shifter position kind of reminds me of the EP3 Civic Type R, although I've never driven one. Don't want to put too much load on it, so we'll go at about 3,500 RPM. All over the road. That is frightening. Truly a fast car. There was a lot of lag between second and third there because I hit limiter. Might get a headache though. There's a bit of ethanol stank going on here. Second gear, 35. Yeah, I hit limiter again. It hooks up until it hits full spool, and then it just lights the tires up, which honestly is a good way to mitigate torque steer, but I keep hitting limiter. This is a car that is begging for boost by gear. So we got a few custom parts on here. He's running the NA block, and then he's running a log manifold from an Evo 10. So you can take Evo parts because this engine, or this block, was actually used by Mitsubishi in some applications as a 2-liter. So he has an Evo X manifold on the car, and then a Borg Warner turbo. And then our friend Kevin at Sideways Autosport did a custom downpipe and external wastegate.
So I had the SRT-4 Neon, and I kind of had a bit of an issue with it. So I figured the next best step would be to get the Caliber, a little bit more comfy for a daily driver. The seats are a bit better, and I still wanted a 4-cylinder turbo, something I could work on myself for sure. And I already had a good base to know what I was doing there. It was on the highway the other day and did a 3rd to 4th gear pull. And I also have the watt box where you don't have to let off the gas to shift. And when I went into 4th, it pulled me almost in the other lane pretty bad. So aluminum block, which is not quite as good. A few fixes, you either have to dart and sleeve it or get an NA block from a junkyard from a few different Chrysler motors, which has what I have in here. Shout out to Anthony Morales and RAF. They figured out that you can use a 2.4 naturally aspirated Chrysler motor from, so yeah, the Avenger, Compass, Patriot, and even the Dodge Journey. You can use the blocks out of there. They have the same crank, but the pistons and the rods are different, so you can either switch them over. Some people fill the blocks. The slits in between the sleeves at the top of the block that always seemed to crack if you push these cars too hard. So we replaced that. At the same time, put some new pistons and rods in it. Still stock bottom end, but then I put cams, springs, retainers in it. And it just kind of went from there. And now it's not a daily anymore.
Before we venture further into the SRT-4, I'd like to give a huge thanks to Carly for sponsoring this video. And to do this, we're going to try out their portable OBD scanner on another hatchback a friend of mine recently imported. This is a 2007 Honda Crossroad, freshly imported by my buddy Martin from Japan, sight unseen. So it's probably best we check under the hood and see what we can find. Let's go do that, and hopefully we can give Martin some good news. So the app can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or Apple Store, and with the free version, you get access to kind of basic diagnostics like check engine light codes, you can run emissions tests, and of course, live data from the engine like your revs and other things that the engine's directly feeding onto your phone. Okay, so let's start by running health diagnostics to determine the health of the vehicle. This will, as we're seeing now, dive that one layer deeper into the manufacturer's codes, what they mean, and even tips on how to fix them. Now, these are the codes that are like one layer deeper, and they might not actually show up as a light on your dash, but Carly gives you the ability to read them. Okay, smart vehicle monitor, health stat is good. Well, Martin, you didn't bring in a lemon. That's good. Okay, so if you want to learn more about the Carly OBD Reader and the app, we put a link in the description and as a pinned comment. Thanks again, Carly. Now back into the Caliber. Yeah, just about tossed me in the left lane. Yeah, no big deal. Wonder what the percentage is of front end collision crashes for Caliber SRT-4s. My God. To call it a hot hatch would be kind of doing it a disservice, because if you put it in that category, it doesn't really fit a lot of the metrics. You know, it's a little bit bigger, it's kind of bulky, it looks almost like a Dodge Magnum or a Dodge Caravan or a Dodge Charger. It's kind of just like a mashup between all three of those vehicles. And at the same time, a PT Cruiser, which of course is what this vehicle replaced. It's running ethanol E60, about 60% ethanol here. And the biggest Achilles heel of the Caliber SRT-4 when compared to the Mazda Speed 3 is that this never came with a real LSD. So that's why I say you can't really put it in the hot hatch category. But that's been solved here. You're probably wondering, if it didn't have an LSD, what did they do? How did they try to mitigate that torque steer? Well, they did effectively what a lot of modern cars are doing in the rear end, which is a brake-based torque vectoring system. So when you're under load, it would effectively squeeze one of the calipers, which are actually off of a Charger RT on a side note, to effectively send torque to the other wheel. So it's a very kind of convoluted setup that maybe made sense in 2008, 2009, but not so much now. Ow, no grip in second. It's all over the road. I can't believe this exists. I can't believe this exists. So with an undersquare engine like this, because it is it's a massive four-cylinder. It's a 2.4 liter four-cylinder, which is pretty big. It has a long stroke and a short bore. So what that means is a lot of low down torque, a lot of mid-range, and not a lot of top end. I'm seeing red line here, factory around 6,300 RPM. We should be able to rev here about 6,800 RPM.
497 wheel horsepower on the Mark's Auto Performance dyno on about 27 pounds boost. It's been turned down to about 25 now for the street. And I got a turbo, just the regular Borg Warner. That was a pretty good price point. You know, it's like 800 bucks American. It's S257 SXE, so 5761, the 63 AR for a street car, so it doesn't have too much lag. lots of little things from then on there. I had to kind of make my own oil drain. There's a lot of just little small things I had to kind of figure out myself. Or yeah, most of the car is 99% done by me. So honestly, I don't really know next to nothing about anything JDM or Japanese or European. I've just toyed with these ever since 04 when I bought my Neon SRT-4 off the showroom. This is what I know. It's just what I've experienced and what I got all my experience in. I don't know anything about those cars. I saw Jerry's was it R34 carbon fiber. That one's pretty cool, but I don't really know nothing about them. Yeah. Other than that, they're pretty quick, but an all-wheel drive. There's a couple guys that are in the process of making these all-wheel drive right now, so that should be interesting to see how they do with that.
The lag isn't that bad. It just smacks you in the face. It's one of those. See if we can hook up second. Like, this is like, oh, hey, Dodge was like, hey, you guys really didn't like the BT Cruiser, did you? And I'm sitting here like, no, it was terrible, but it was great in the way now that like a Pontiac Aztek is great, because it's been comical. It's been utilized as a comic relief in modern pop culture. Breaking Bad comes to instance for the Aztek, right? So the BT Cruiser is kind of like in the same vein, and this is kind of just Dodge going like, oh, we got to bounce back from this and show you guys that, hey, with some styling, some aggressive fender flares, and some fake hood scoops on the hood, that we can really make a car, a hatchback, that's worthwhile in the performance tuner world. And to a certain extent, they kind of did. Now, is it a loved car? No, not really. I don't hear about the Caliber SRT-4 too much in circles, but it's a big player in a small circle. That's exactly what this is, much like the Mazda Speed 3. If you've never experienced a high horsepower front wheel drive car, it is something else. It's frightening in a more almost uncontrollable way than a rear wheel drive car is when it gets sideways, because that's a very instinctual, you can just feel in your seat where the rear end's gonna step. After a while, it's kind of like muscle memory, and then your wheels or your hands just counter steer and react accordingly on instinct. Torque steer is not something that can be kind of fought with instinct. It doesn't seem to take itself too seriously. It's kind of like the Jeep SRT-8. It's like, yeah, we chucked a bunch of power at the thing and it kind of works. It looks aggressive, but this era of kind of like the retro modern look of Dodge, I'm not the biggest fan of. Doesn't do anything for me. The steering wheel's terrible. But you know, the plastic on the doors, it's a bargain. It's a bargain car, but you step in a first gen Mazda Speed 3 and that's exactly what that car is as well. It spun the whole way through third there. Lit up third the entire way. Right at the top, right at 6,000 RPM, there's like, boom, it hooked and it was just ready to go then. That's insane. Oh my God.
It's just a stock ECU with HP tuner software, and it's custom tuned remotely by Edgar in Florida. He does most of the high horsepower calibers for sure. I mean, the next thing I would probably do is I'd put forged pistons and rods in it and probably max the turbo out. But I mean, don't tell my wife that.
Stock transmission too, that's the crazy thing. I was not expecting it to shift so well either. I mean, how they ended up making, you know, this was a one-time offer from Dodge. They make nothing like this now, nor do I think they ever will, nor do I think they ever should. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, it's insane. It's totally not necessary, but that's most modified cars, is it not? That's why we love the game, right? Thanks guys for watching. Hit me up on Instagram at Roads Untraveled, up on Brandon's social media if he wants to. in the description below. Subscribe if you want to see what I'm shooting on a day-to-day basis. See you guys soon.